Okay, hey everybody, Rocket Review here. We are at Distill America, which you know because you've been watching the videos, I'm sure, because you're a lovely subscriber. If you're not, get on that. But we are here with Lew Bryson, author of Tasting Whiskey. Which, if you haven't picked that up...
Yeah, definitely get on that.
Yeah. More so than the subscribing. Well, and we were just upstairs at a tasting for doing scotch. Do you now when you're tasting a whiskey, do you think that there are different tasting techniques for different categories of whiskey, or is it generally across the board? Do you think it's more or less the same?
It generally uses the same techniques across the board. I'm going to change them up. I mean, mainly it depends on the proof. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be much more likely to add water to a higher proof whiskey. Although, I try. I was going to say almost everything, but really everything I try undiluted first.
Sure.
Because I think that how it drinks undiluted is an important part of it. Then almost everything I will try diluted as well.
Sure.
But otherwise, no, technique, like no, it's all the same.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I have a question. When it comes to water, I've heard a lot of people are like, I've never add water to my whiskey. But I think that's a little misguided, maybe.
I think so, because I think you're missing a major point in that somebody's already done it for you. You were talking about the tasting you were just at. I mean, it was pointed out really well there. Water's added to it after it comes off the still, before it goes in the barrel. When it comes out of the barrel, water's added to it again to bring it down to proofing strength, unless it's a cask-proof whiskey, which is not most of them.
Right.
So most of them have already had water added to them. It's not holy writ that you can't add more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because really, whatever you want to do to the whiskey to make it taste best for you, it's your whiskey.
Yeah.
Who is anyone else to tell you what to do with it?
Right.
Yeah.
Pour Windex in it if you want.
If you really want to. But I'd add a cube ice if you do.
Yeah,
That's
right.
better.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess in the same vein, I've wondered, because I've heard a couple different explanations for this. I've heard, adding water to whiskey opens it up, brings out more of the flavor. But I've heard why the science behind that, I've heard different from different people. So do you have
you're asking the history major about science.
Do you have any idea why the water does that?
I've heard a variety of things, that it cracks open rings, it does this, I don't know. Mostly what I know is when it rains, I smell more things. My dog smells more things when it rains. If it hasn't rained for like 3 weeks in the summer, and all of a sudden it rains, you can even smell like the pavement of the street.
Yeah.
And it just comes out. It comes up. So there's obviously something to it. What it is, I don't know.
Yeah.
The other thing is, it also takes away some of the heat of the alcohol.
Yeah.
Making it easier for things to get through. But yeah, there's definitely something going on. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Is there? Is there?
I just did what my history professor used to say, I don't know, and then talk for 5 minutes.
Yeah, right.
And wind up with, but I don't know. Sorry about that.
But I have a lot of information for everything I don't know.
Right.
I guess I would say is the proof you drink a whiskey at, right? Is it on a whiskey by whiskey basis?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So there isn't one proof that everyone should just prove it down to.
No. I'm sure there are situations in which you would want to do that, but they are not the situations for the normal drinker.
Sure.
They're not even situations for the specialist aficionado drinker. They're like situations for the person whose job it is, like literally, even more than me. Somebody who's joylessly tasting whiskey in a quiet white cubicle with in colored glass, so they can't. That's not drinking whiskey. That's work.
You're right.
So,
right.
Yeah, I wouldn't say so. I think what you want to do is for each individual whiskey, find that proof that's right for that moment, which may even be different the next week.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then I do want to ask, you're leading a course right now, or a seminar at the event on Canadian whiskey.
Yes.
And Crown Royal specifically. Now, I think Crown Royal has been much maligned in the segment of the community, the hardcore segment of the community. So why did you choose Crown Royal?
Well, for one, Crown Royal sponsors the seminar, and we get whiskey. But honestly, the thing is, I mean, we're tasting 4 different bottlings of Crown Royal that are really quite different, and offer an example of the variety that is in Canadian whiskey. I think this is one of the overlooked things about the category. What most people seem to think is a weakness, a cheap spot of Canadian, in that it's blended, in that you can add things other than actual whiskey to it. Those are the strengths of Canadian whiskey. You just have to understand it. I didn't understand it at first either. I was one of those, brown vodka, one of those people. And then, my eyes got opened in the course of about a week, tasting whiskeys in Canada and understanding the philosophy, which is there's a reason it's blended. The reason it's blended is, what flavor do I want to make? Okay, I need some of this, some of this, some of this, some of this. Instead of your distillery, the machines and the flavors of the grain telling you what your whiskey is going to taste like.
Sure.
Instead, as a blender in Canada, not a distiller, as a blender, you can make a whiskey taste what you want. I mean, for instance, I don't have the bottles with me. Sorry, I'm like flaking here. I'm running on too little sleep. The Crown Royal XL. You take all that, the grain, the wood character, that peppery cedar shavings character of Canadian whiskey, and then you put it in a cognac cask and just add this layer of icing to it, like frosting on it, and it's just marvelous. You get this whole other thing. The Northern Harvest rye, you pull out more of that spice from the rye. I mean, Canadian whiskey, again, this is one of the things that people are like, they can say it's rye,
but it's really rye.
Yeah, well, this one is. There are, as far as that goes, some of the Canadian whiskeys are 100% rye.
Sure.
And they're looking at the American whiskeys like, 51%, too bad. So it's...
Little baby rye.
I know. The thing is, it's actually an incredibly varied category.
Sure.
You can make it, not quite anything you want, obviously, still gotta use grain, but it really has a lot of flexibility, and the blenders at Crown Royal have been really starting to stretch the box. I think a lot of people are beaten on Crown because of the flavors. The apple, the maple, the peach that's coming up.
Sure.
And that's an easy hit. On the other hand, as I like to say about flavored whiskey, every time somebody buys a handle of Fireball, another bottle of Pappy gets its wings. So, don't look down on this stuff. There are people who want to drink it. God bless them.
Right.
They're putting money in the pockets of the people who are making the whiskey you want to drink.
Right.
So
and no one's putting a gun to your head making you drink it.
Absolutely not. So, yeah.
And now I know we're pressed for time. You got a seminar to lead.
I do.
So I want to finish up, but I've heard you are writing a new book.
I am.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. The working title is Whiskey Masterclass. I'm doing it with Quarto, different publisher this time. The idea of the book is to take every building block of whiskey flavor and character and aroma. The grains, the different types of still, how those different types of still work, fermentation, the yeast, the fermentation regimen, the temperatures, aging, what type of barrel do you use, what type of warehouse do you use, where is that warehouse, proofing, what proof do you bottle it at, all those things have, and more, really. I mean, I'm just, all those things have an effect on the flavor of the whiskey, and I want to dig into what does that actually do? Because, I mean, I hear people saying, oh, well, all these whiskeys are the same at Buffalo Trace or this, because the mash bills are the same. I'm like, every Scotch is actually the same whiskey because they're all made with malt.
Barley.
It doesn't work that way. You know, there are other things that go into it. Dr. Bill Lumsden, the blender at Glenmorangie and Ardbeg, you know, always says, so there's 50% coming from the barrels. That means there's 50% coming from somewhere else. Yeah. So I want to get at all 100% of it.
Absolutely.
Not just this is from the barrel, this is from the everything.
Sure. How it all works together.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay. Thank you so much for talking to us.
You
this
bet.
Is Lew Bryson, former editor at Whisky Advocate and prolific writer on all things whiskey. Thank you so much for coming on the review.
It's a pleasure. Thanks.